Ethan Blake was a man who had everything: wealth, looks, intelligence, and power. Yet, in all his perfection, there was one thing he could not buy: genuine love. At 31, Ethan had already built one of the largest tech empires in Africa, Blake Innovations, a company known for its cutting-edge software and philanthropic projects. His name appeared in business magazines, and his face was splashed across TV interviews. But behind the confident smile was a man plagued by emptiness. People loved Ethan Blake, but only for what he had. Women smiled at him for his fortune, not for his soul. And that, more than anything, haunted him. So, when his grandmother, the only person who still called him "my boy," whispered one quiet evening, "Ethan, until a woman can love you for who you are without knowing your name, you will always be alone," something inside him shifted. That night, Ethan decided to disappear. Ethan's penthouse overlooked the city lights. It was the kind of view people dreamed of, the skyline glittering like stars fallen to earth. Yet, as he sat there in silence, sipping coffee, his heart felt like an empty mansion. His personal assistant, Daniel, entered quietly. "Sir, tomorrow's schedule. Meeting with the board at 9, press interview at 1, and dinner with the Minister of Finance at 7. Ethan didn't respond at first. He stared into his cup. "Daniel," he finally said, "cancel everything after tomorrow." Daniel blinked. "Cancel, sir? For how long?" "Indefinitely." Daniel frowned, confused. "Sir, may I ask why?" Ethan stood, pacing to the window. "Because I'm done living in a world where everyone wants a piece of Ethan Blake. I need to know if I can still be loved as just a man." Daniel hesitated. "You mean anonymously?" "Exactly. I want to start over. I'll go somewhere no one knows me. No assistants, no luxury cars, no name tags, nothing." Daniel looked worried. "Sir, that's dangerous. You're a public figure. You can't just vanish." "I won't vanish," Ethan said, turning to him with a half-smile. "I'll just hide in plain sight." And then came the words that would change everything. "I'm going undercover, as a crippled man." Daniel's jaw dropped. "A crippled man?" "Yes, it's the only way no one will suspect I'm who I really am. People treat you differently when they think you can't stand tall. Maybe that's when I'll finally see who's real." The next few weeks were spent in secrecy. Ethan used his private team to craft a new identity. Michael Carter, a quiet, middle-class man who had lost the use of his legs after a supposed motorcycle accident. He purchased an old but decent wheelchair, a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and a used car adapted for his condition. His personal stylist toned down his looks. No more tailored suits, no designer watches. He wore simple shirts, faded jeans, and sneakers. His smooth hair was replaced with a casual, slightly unkempt cut, and glasses hid his sharp eyes. When he looked in the mirror, even he could hardly recognize himself. Ethan Blake, billionaire tech mogul, had vanished. In his place sat Michael Carter, a quiet man in a wheelchair. Daniel stared at him, shaking his head. "Sir, this is insane." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe, but sometimes you need to lose everything to find something real." Before leaving, he arranged for Daniel to run the company quietly in his absence. Only Daniel and his lawyer knew the truth. Then, one early morning, Ethan drove himself away from the city he ruled, to a quieter place where no one knew his name. Michael Carter's new life began in a small town on the outskirts of a bustling city. It was peaceful, filled with everyday people who didn't care about corporate boardrooms or luxury jets. The air smelled of roasted corn and hope. He rented a small apartment above a grocery store. The landlord, an older woman named Mama Ruth, welcomed him kindly. "You look like a decent young man," she said, patting his shoulder. "Don't worry, we'll take care of you here. Life no day too hard if you get good neighbors." He smiled. "Thank you, Ma. I'm grateful." And for the first time in years, Ethan, now Michael, felt a sense of quiet freedom. He joined a small community center where locals came to learn digital skills. Using his real expertise in tech, he volunteered to teach computer literacy classes, carefully hiding his true identity. It was there, on a quiet Tuesday morning, that he met Amelia Jones. Amelia was not like the women Ethan had known. She wasn't chasing glamour or riches. She carried herself with quiet strength. She worked as a fashion designer at a small boutique and volunteered at the community center to help young girls learn sewing. Her smile was soft, her laughter easy. But behind her eyes was a trace of sadness, the kind that only people who had seen hardship could wear. When she first saw Michael rolling into class, she greeted him warmly. "Good morning, sir. Are you the new instructor?" He nodded. "Yes, Michael Carter." She smiled. "Welcome. I'm Amelia. If you need any help setting up, just let me know." As days turned into weeks, they began talking more. During lunch breaks, she would sit beside him, sharing food from her lunchbox, rice, stew, sometimes plantain. He would listen as she told stories about her late father, about how she dreamed of starting her own fashion brand one day. "What about you?" she asked one afternoon. "What did you do before?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I used to work in tech, but after the accident, I decided to focus on teaching. Feels good to give back." She smiled softly. "That's really noble." Ethan found himself drawn to her simplicity, her kindness, her laughter, her compassion for others. For the first time, someone was looking at him not as a billionaire, but as a man. Over the next few months, their friendship deepened. Ethan, or Michael, found peace in their conversations. She made him laugh again. She treated him like a human being, not a trophy. But he also noticed how people treated him differently. When he rolled into restaurants, some customers stared with pity. Some ignored him entirely. Others whispered. It was an eye-opening experience. He realized how invisible people could become when the world decided they were less. Yet Amelia never treated him like that. To her, he wasn't a crippled man. He was a friend, a good man. And slowly, her care began to awaken something in him he had buried for years. Hope. One evening, after a class, rain began to fall heavily. Everyone rushed out, but Amelia stayed behind, helping him close the classroom windows. They ended up sitting together in silence, listening to the rain. She looked at him quietly. "You know, Michael, you have this way of making people believe in themselves." He smiled faintly. "Funny. I feel like you do the same." Their eyes met. For a moment, the room was filled only with the rhythm of rain and unspoken emotion. Then she looked away, shyly smiling. "You're a good man, Michael." He felt his heart twist. "If only you knew who I really was." As weeks passed, Ethan's double life became harder to maintain. His company was thriving, but he missed his old life at times, the ease, the control. But every time he saw Amelia, he reminded himself why he was doing this. One afternoon, Daniel called him privately. "Sir, the board is getting restless. They want you to return soon." "I'm not ready," Ethan replied. "Sir, people are starting to ask questions." "Then let them," he said quietly. "I found something more important than profit." He hung up before Daniel could protest. But the real conflict wasn't with his company. It was within him. He was falling in love with Amelia, and that terrified him. He had promised himself this was only an experiment, to see if real love still existed. But now it was no longer a test. It was real. Yet how could he tell her the truth? Would she forgive him for deceiving her? Would she believe that he truly loved her? Or think it was all just a game? The fear gnawed at him. And just as he wrestled with that fear, fate began to test his heart. Amelia's boutique was struggling. The landlord had raised the rent, and customers were few. One afternoon, she sat in the sewing room, head in her hands. Michael found her there, looking defeated. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. She sighed. "I might lose the shop. I've tried everything. It's my only source of income, and I can't let my apprentices down." Michael's heart ached for her. He wanted to fix it, to write a check and save her. But he couldn't. That would ruin everything. So instead, he gave her advice. "Sometimes, when the door closes, it's just God telling us to build a new one. What if you take your designs online? Sell them through social media?" She looked up, curious. "Online?" He nodded. "Yes, I can help you create a small e-commerce page. It's not expensive. Just trust me. That night, he stayed late with her, helping set up her brand Amelia Designs online. She smiled as she watched him work, admiration glowing in her eyes. "You're amazing, Michael." "Thank you." He smiled back. "No, thank you. You've reminded me what it means to care." As their bond grew, whispers began in the community. "Amelia is getting too close to that crippled man," one woman murmured. "She deserves better," another said. But Amelia ignored them. She saw something deeper in Michael: kindness, wisdom, humility. One weekend, they went to the beach with other volunteers. As they sat by the shore, watching the sunset, she turned to him and said softly, "You've changed my life, Michael. I don't even know how to explain it." He looked into her eyes. "Maybe because you changed mine first." The world faded. The waves whispered. And when her hand brushed his, he didn't pull away. That night, for the first time, she kissed him, softly, hesitantly, and his world spun. But later that night, alone in his room, he sat staring at his reflection. He saw not Michael Carter, the crippled teacher, but Ethan Blake, the billionaire liar. He dropped his face in his hands, whispering, "What have I done?" 1 week later, Daniel called again, this time with urgency. "Sir, the media is getting suspicious. Someone leaked that you've been missing. Reporters are digging. If they find you..." Ethan's chest tightened. "Then I have to end this before they do." But fate had other plans. A local journalist named Tina Brooks, working on a story about disability in Nigeria, spotted him at the community center. Something about his face seemed familiar. She took a photo, and the next day everything changed. Amelia arrived at the center the next morning, her phone buzzing with messages. "Is this your teacher?" Someone had sent her a photo of Michael beside a headline, "Is this the missing billionaire Ethan Blake?" She froze, heart pounding. She rushed to the classroom, and there he was, sitting by the window, silent, waiting. He looked up slowly. The truth was already in his eyes. "Amelia," he began softly, "I was going to tell you." Tears filled her eyes. "Tell me what, Michael? Or should I say Ethan Blake?" Silence. She stood, shaking. "All this time? You lied to me? Pretended to be crippled? Just to what? Test me?" He rolled forward, his voice trembling. "No, I did it to find someone real. And I found you. Amelia. I swear, everything I felt was real." "Don't," she whispered, tears falling. "You made me believe in something pure. You played with my heart." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Goodbye, Ethan." And she walked away. For 3 days after Amelia left, Ethan sat in his small apartment, staring at the empty chair across from him, the one where she always sat. Her laughter still lingered in the room, echoing faintly like a memory refusing to fade. The rain had stopped, but inside him it hadn't. Every drop of silence felt heavier than thunder. He didn't eat, didn't sleep. He just replayed that moment again and again. Amelia's eyes when she saw the article, the shock twisting into betrayal. The worst part wasn't her leaving. It was knowing that, for her, everything she believed in had become a lie. Daniel, his personal assistant, had been trying to reach him for days. "Sir, you need to come back. The board is asking questions. The media's still on your disappearance story." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "Tell them I'm alive. That's enough." "But what about Daniel?" He cut in quietly. "Not now." He turned off the phone again. For the first time in his adult life, the billionaire who could buy anything found himself powerless. Love, he realized, was something you couldn't control, not with money, not with status, and certainly not with lies. Across town, Amelia sat alone in her small boutique, staring at the same phone that had shattered her world. "Is this the missing Nigerian billionaire Ethan Blake?" The headline burned into her memory. She scrolled through more articles. Young tech billionaire living as a disguised commoner? Photos of Ethan in sleek suits, shaking hands with world leaders, speaking at business forums. It was all there. Her heart clenched. How could Michael, the quiet man who once struggled to push his wheelchair over the rough road outside the training center, be that person? Was everything a lie? Was every smile rehearsed? every kindness staged. For 2 weeks, she refused to speak to him. He called, she didn't answer. He sent letters, she burned them. The hurt ran too deep. Her best friend, Tonia, tried to console her. Maybe he had a reason, you saw the way he treated you. Real billionaires don't do that fake humility thing. Amelia sighed, holding back tears. He lied to me, Tonia. That's reason enough. Tonia tilted her head. Maybe, but maybe he was trying to see who'd love him without the money. You told me yourself his eyes never looked at you like other men's did. Amelia didn't reply, because deep down, even in her anger, she still saw truth in those eyes. A month later, the name Ethan Blake once again dominated headlines. Young billionaire returns after mysterious hiatus. Ethan had finally gone back to his company headquarters. The press surrounded him as he arrived, flashes lighting the air like lightning. Mr. Blake, where have you been? Is it true you were living in disguise? Who's the mystery woman spotted with you in the leaked photos? He ignored them all. Inside the boardroom, Daniel whispered, Sir, investors are worried. Your absence. I know, Ethan interrupted, his tone calm but weary. I'll fix it. He worked relentlessly, but every meeting, every chart, every contract felt hollow. He looked around at the faces of executives, all smiling, all pretending to care, and realized how different they were from Amelia's simple, honest smile. That night, he stood on his balcony, gazing at the city lights. They shimmered like diamonds on water, beautiful but cold. He remembered the small sewing machine in Amelia's boutique, the warm laughter of her students, the way she'd touch his shoulder when he made a joke. He whispered into the night, she loved Michael, not Ethan. And then it struck him, if she could love the man without money, maybe he could help her as the man with it without her ever knowing. 2 weeks later, Amelia received a letter from the local business council. Dear Ms. Amelia James, we are pleased to inform you that your small business, Amel Designs, has been selected for the Women of Purpose Business Grant, 5 million Nigerian nairas for expansion and community training support. Amelia's jaw dropped. What? I didn't even apply for this. Tonia squealed. Girl, that's a miracle. But Amelia frowned. Something didn't sit right. The logo on the letter, a subtle B embossed in gold at the corner, looked strangely familiar. Days later, during the presentation ceremony, she saw him, Ethan, in a dark suit, standing near the edge of the crowd, watching quietly as the minister handed her the award plaque. Their eyes met for the first time in weeks. Her breath caught. He didn't approach her, didn't speak, just smiled faintly and nodded, a gesture of quiet pride before walking away. That night, she sat in her boutique surrounded by new sewing machines and materials from the grant. She touched one of the machines, noticing a tiny engraving on the side. Keep building, M. Her tears fell silently. He was helping her from a distance, no credit, no spotlight, just care. Ethan's company thrived again, but he wasn't the same man. The corporate world now bored him. The luxury that once dazzled him felt meaningless. Instead, he poured his energy into building the Blake Foundation for Community Empowerment, a program aimed at supporting small businesses and computer literacy centers across Nigeria. Every project was modeled after Amelia's center, her kindness, her resilience, her belief that one small act of teaching could change a life. He visited centers in secret, often as Michael again, though no longer pretending to be disabled. He just wanted to feel real humanity again. One evening, Daniel found him sitting at the foundation's new office, reviewing proposals. Sir, Daniel said gently, you've done more charity this year than profit. Are you sure about this direction? Ethan smiled. Maybe profit isn't always in the numbers, Daniel. Maybe it's in the people we lift. 6 months passed. Amelia's fashion business had grown beyond her imagination. Her designs were featured in local magazines, and her community training program was thriving. One afternoon, she was invited to speak at a Women in Enterprise conference. Nervous but excited, she prepared her speech about resilience, honesty, and faith. As she took the stage, her eyes swept the audience and froze. Ethan was there, sitting quietly in the third row, watching her with the same calm admiration he'd always had. Her heartbeat stumbled. She tried to focus on her speech, but her voice wavered slightly. When the session ended, he approached her backstage. "Amelia," she turned, uncertain. "Mr. Blake." He smiled sadly. "I deserve that formality." She folded her arms, guarded. "Why are you here?" "Because I needed to hear your voice again," he said softly. "Not from interviews or videos. From you." Silence hung heavy between them. "Ethan," she began. "You lied to me." "I did," he admitted. "And I hate myself for it. But every moment with you was real. The laughter, the lessons, the dreams, they weren't part of a game. You made me see life differently." Her voice trembled. "You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I was a coward. Afraid that if you knew who I really was, I'd lose you. And I did anyway." Amelia looked at him for a long moment. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. She could see the same Michael she once knew, just dressed differently. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she whispered. "I'll wait," he said quietly. "Even if it takes forever." Months passed again. Their lives crossed now and then, at community events, charity galas, foundation fundraisers. They spoke politely, shared smiles, but never crossed the line. Until one evening, Ethan found himself invited to a small fashion exhibition, Amelia's first major show in Lagos. The lights dimmed, music played, and models walked out wearing her creations, a blend of African tradition and modern grace. The final model paused center stage, wearing a gown titled Rebirth. The host announced, "This piece was inspired by forgiveness, resilience, and the belief that love can rise from truth." Ethan's heart swelled. When the applause ended, he found Amelia standing backstage, radiant in a simple white dress. "That was beautiful," he said softly. She smiled. "It's dedicated to someone who taught me that broken things can still create beauty." Their eyes met, for the first time, without pain between them. Weeks later, Amelia found a small envelope slipped under her boutique door. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Amelia, if I could go back in time, I'd tell you the truth from the start. Not because I wanted to be loved as a billionaire, but because I finally understand that being loved as a man is the only kind that matters. You taught me that. Thank you for believing in Michael when the world only saw Ethan. Always E." She smiled through tears. For the first time, the wound inside her felt healed. That same day, she walked out of her shop to find Ethan sitting in a car parked nearby. Their eyes met through the window, and she walked up slowly. "You still like leaving letters?" she teased gently. He smiled. "It worked last time." She laughed, then opened the passenger door and sat beside him. For a moment, they just sat in silence. Two souls who had been broken, now finding peace again. Months later, at a small garden wedding surrounded by close friends, laughter, and flowers, Ethan and Amelia exchanged vows. He looked at her and said, "I once pretended to be broken to find love. But you showed me that love doesn't find us when we hide. It finds us when we're honest." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "And you showed me that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength." The crowd cheered as they kissed, golden sunlight pouring over them like a blessing. Years later, in the headquarters of the Blake Foundation, a glass display case stood in the main lobby. Inside it, beneath soft lights, sat an old wheelchair, polished and preserved. A small plaque beneath it read, "The chair that carried me to the truth. Ethan Blake." Every visitor stopped to read it, never knowing the full story behind it, but always feeling its message. And somewhere in that same building, in a sunlit office filled with laughter and ideas, Ethan and Amelia worked side by side, partners, lovers, and best friends, building a future that had begun with a lie, but ended with the most powerful truth of all. The first light of morning crept gently through the glass walls of their new home, a sprawling modern mansion nestled on the quiet outskirts of Lagos. The sound of birds outside mixed with the faint hum of the city far away. Inside it was peaceful, warm, alive. Amelia stood by the balcony, wrapped in a soft robe, watching the sunrise. The golden light touched her skin as she held a cup of tea, breathing in the freshness of the day. Behind her, she heard a familiar voice. "You're up early again," Ethan murmured, stepping closer. She smiled softly. "You know I like to watch the city wake up." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "And I like to watch you." It had been a year since their wedding, small, elegant, and deeply personal. Despite the wealth and fame, they had chosen simplicity. Ethan often said, "Luxury means nothing if peace isn't part of it." Peace, that was what they both cherished most. After the whirlwind of their reunion, marriage had come like a calm after a storm. No paparazzi could shake their foundation now. No business scandal could unsettle what they had built on truth. But like every marriage, even theirs came with lessons, and not every day was perfect. Amelia quickly discovered that marriage to a billionaire came with 1,000 expectations she never asked for. She was no longer just Amelia the fashion designer. She was now Mrs. Amelia Blake, wife of the tech tycoon. Her boutique still thrived, but the press was relentless. Every outfit she wore, every word she said, even her smiles, became news headlines. At first, it amused her. Then it began to weigh her down. One evening, she sat quietly in their living room, scrolling through a gossip blog post titled, "Can a small-town seamstress handle the billionaire's world?" Ethan walked in, loosened his tie, and saw the look on her face. "What's wrong?" She handed him the phone. "This, again." He read it and sighed. "You shouldn't pay attention to that." "I try not to," she said softly. "But sometimes it feels like I don't belong here, like I'm an outsider in your world." Ethan sat beside her and took her hand. "This isn't my world anymore, Amelia. It's ours. And no one decides where you belong. You already do." Her eyes softened, but tears still threatened. "Then promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll never lose the simplicity that made us who we are. I don't want to wake up one day and realize we've become strangers wearing designer smiles." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I promise." Months later, the Blake Foundation had become one of Nigeria's fastest-growing philanthropic organizations. Ethan and Amelia ran it side by side, a rare power couple that the media couldn't help but admire. They weren't just donating money. They were changing lives. Amelia designed a new initiative called Hands of Hope, a program that provided sewing and tailoring training to women in rural areas. Ethan added Code for Change, a project teaching young people tech and innovation skills for free. Together, their foundation became a symbol of modern philanthropy rooted in love, empathy, and purpose. But the success brought new challenges. One afternoon, during a board meeting, Ethan noticed Amelia's tired face. She had been juggling the foundation, her boutique, and their home. After the meeting, he gently pulled her aside. "You need a break," he said. She shook her head. "There's too much to do." "Amelia, you can't pour from an empty cup," he insisted. "You've given so much to everyone. Let me take care of you for a change." She smiled faintly. "And how do you plan to do that, Mr. Blake?" "By kidnapping you for a weekend," he said playfully. She laughed, the first real laugh in days. 2 days later, they escaped to Obudu Mountain Resort. No assistants, no reporters, no phones. Just the two of them and the clouds rolling through the hills. That trip reminded them of who they were beneath the layers of responsibility. A man who once faked being broken, and a woman who healed him anyway. A few months after their getaway, Amelia stood in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, holding a small white stick in her trembling hands. Her heart raced as she stared at the faint blue line appearing slowly across it. She gasped, "Oh my God!" When she told Ethan that evening, he froze for a moment, as if his brain couldn't process it. "Wait, are you serious?" She nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "We're having a baby?" "Yes, Ethan, we're having a baby." He held her tighter. "Do you know what this means?" She looked up at him. "That we're about to learn a whole new kind of love." And they did. For 9 months, their world revolved around anticipation. Baby names, nursery colors, late-night cravings, gentle lullabies. Ethan attended every doctor's appointment, held Amelia's hand through every ultrasound, and whispered to her belly every night, "Hey, little one, it's your dad. I can't wait to meet you." When their son was born, the world seemed to stop. They named him Liam, meaning strong-willed protector. Ethan held him for the first time and whispered, "I once pretended to be broken to find love, and now that love has made me whole." Parenthood changed everything. Amelia, once effortlessly composed, now found herself running on coffee and 2 hours of sleep. Ethan, the master of time management, quickly learned that babies had no respect for business schedules. One night, after a particularly chaotic day, Amelia sat in the nursery rocking Liam, her eyes half closed. Ethan entered quietly, tie loose, exhaustion written all over his face. "Here," he said softly, reaching for the baby. "Let me." She hesitated, then handed Liam over. Ethan rocked the baby gently, humming off-key. Amelia smiled through her fatigue. "You're terrible at that." He grinned. "Yeah, but he likes it." Liam's tiny fingers reached up, clutching his father's tie. The room filled with peace again. "Amelia," Ethan said quietly, "you're doing an amazing job." "So are you," she whispered back. That night, they sat together under the soft glow of the nursery lamp, two exhausted souls, bound by love and the tiny heartbeat that had become their world. As Liam grew, so did the challenges. Between work, philanthropy, and parenting, tension occasionally crept in. One evening, Ethan missed Liam's first school play because of a sudden emergency meeting. When he returned home, Amelia was silent, her disappointment heavy in the air. "You promised, Ethan," she said quietly. "He kept looking at the audience, waiting for you." Ethan's heart sank. "I'm sorry. The investors." She shook her head. "There will always be investors. But he'll only be 5 once." He didn't argue. He simply nodded, guilt washing over him. The next day, Ethan made a drastic change. He restructured his company to delegate leadership, giving himself more time for family and the foundation. That decision made headlines. Tech billionaire prioritizes family over fortune. When a journalist asked him why, he smiled and said, "Because the greatest investment I ever made was in the people I love." Years passed like chapters in a book, each one richer than the last. Liam turned 4, curious, kind, and endlessly talkative. One morning, Amelia stood at the foundation's Women's Center, talking to trainees when she suddenly felt lightheaded. Later that day, the doctor smiled after her tests. "Congratulations, Mrs. Blake. You're expecting again." When she told Ethan, he was stunned silent, then knelt in front of her and kissed her stomach, whispering, "You just gave me another reason to live carefully." 9 months later, they welcomed a baby girl, Ella Grace Blake. Ethan cried openly in the hospital room as he held his daughter. "She looks like you," he whispered. Amelia smiled. "No, she looks like us. A little bit of both, just like our story." 3 years later, tragedy struck. A small fire broke out in one of the Blake Foundation's community centers due to faulty wiring. Though everyone survived, it shook Ethan deeply. He sat in his office afterward, replaying the security footage, haunted by the thought of what could have happened. Amelia found him there, head buried in his hands. "Ethan," she said gently, "you can't blame yourself for everything." He looked up, eyes tired. "They trust me with their dreams, Amelia. I can't fail them." She knelt beside him. "You didn't fail them. You saved them with the systems you built, with the staff you trained. You've done everything right. But even good people face storms." He took her hand and breathed deeply. In that moment, he realized that strength wasn't about being invincible. It was about being vulnerable enough to lean on someone when you're tired. 10 years passed. Liam was now 10, Ella 7, the pride of their parents' lives. Their laughter filled the halls of the Blake estate like music. Amelia's boutique had evolved into an international brand promoting ethical African fashion. Ethan's foundation had expanded across Africa, helping thousands of young people find purpose and opportunity. But more than their achievements, what everyone admired most was their unity. Every year, on their anniversary, They returned to the small community where they first met. The old training center had been rebuilt and renamed the Amelia and Michael Learning Hub, a tribute to the love story that started it all. There, they sat side by side, watching new students learn computers and sewing, just as they once did. Ethan smiled, whispering, "This is where my life began." Amelia leaned on his shoulder. "Mine too." Years later, when Ethan turned 60, he was invited to give a speech at a global summit on humanity and innovation. He stood on stage, calm and confident, Amelia and their grown children watching from the front row. He began softly, "I once pretended to be broken to find love. And in that brokenness, I found truth. That love is the greatest invention humanity ever made." He paused, glancing at Amelia. "She saw me when I was invisible. She taught me that wealth means nothing if it doesn't touch hearts. And every good thing I've done since then, every life changed, every dream built, began the day she walked into a dusty little classroom and smiled at me." The audience erupted into applause. Afterward, as they walked out together, Amelia whispered, "You still know how to make me cry." He smiled, "And you still know how to make me whole." The camera flashes caught them walking hand in hand, still the same two souls who once met in the quiet hum of a small computer room, proving to the world that love, when it's true, doesn't fade with time. It multiplies.